The rain hammered Jake Mitchell's windshield with the kind of fury that made smart men pull over and wait it out. He kept driving. 38 years old, and he still hadn't learned when to quit fighting losing battles. Not with weather, not with ex-wives, not with the ghosts of women who'd left him a decade ago. Emma was safe at his mother's house now. Volcano project materials spread across the kitchen table like a miniature disaster zone. His daughter could explain plate tectonics better than most adults, but she still needed her father to pick her up from school when the rain came down sideways. That's when the flashing lights cut through the gray curtain of rain. A police cruiser sat crippled on the highway shoulder, hood yawning open like a broken jaw. Hazard lights blinked their desperate rhythm into the storm. A figure in uniform stood hunched over the engine bay, completely soaked, long hair plastered to her back as water streamed off her hat. Most drivers would accelerate past. Not their problem, especially in weather that threatened to wash the asphalt clean off the road. Jake's foot found the brake before his mind caught up to the decision. His father's voice echoed from 20 years gone. You see someone needs help? You help. Don't matter who they are or what it costs you. The truck's tires crunched gravel as he pulled onto the shoulder 20 feet behind the cruiser. Jake grabbed the umbrella from behind his seat, barely used, a gift from Emma last Christmas, with cartoon dinosaurs dancing across the fabric. The absurdity of bringing dinosaurs to rescue a cop almost made him smile. Rain attacked him the moment he opened the door. Cold needles found every gap in his flannel shirt. Need some help, officer? The figure straightened and turned. Time didn't stop, that was movie bullshit. But something in Jake's chest seized up hard enough that his next breath came shallow and painful. The umbrella trembled in his grip as he stared into eyes he'd spent a decade trying to forget. Green eyes. Not blue, not hazel. That specific shade of green that reminded him of spring grass after winter finally released its grip. Sarah? Her name escaped as barely a whisper, stolen by the wind before it could reach her. But she heard it. The way her whole body went rigid told him she heard it. Jake Mitchell. Not a question. A statement heavy with disbelief and something else he couldn't name. This can't be real. The woman standing before him wore a police uniform that clung to her frame like a second skin, badge glinting dull in the storm's gray light. Her brown hair, longer than he remembered, hung in wet ropes past her shoulders. The sharp angles of her face had softened with age, but those eyes, Christ, those eyes hadn't changed at all. Sarah Anderson. The woman he'd planned to marry. The woman who'd left him 3 weeks before their wedding, claiming she wasn't ready for commitment, that she needed to find herself, that staying would suffocate them both. Professional instinct kicked in, saving him from drowning in the past. What's wrong with the vehicle? Battery died. Just cut out in the middle of the highway. Her voice carried the same low timbre he remembered, but something harder had crept into it. Years of giving orders, maybe. Years of being someone he didn't know. Jake moved to the engine, muscle memory taking over. He'd fixed enough vehicles on job sites to diagnose this blind. I've got jumper cables. Hold on. The silence while he retrieved his equipment felt thick enough to choke on. Sarah stood under the umbrella he'd thrust at her, watching him work with an expression he couldn't read. The rain kept falling. His shirt was soaked through now, cold water running down his spine. So, you're back in town. Jake connected the cables with practiced efficiency, not looking at her. Last I heard, you were in California. Moved back 2 years ago. Made detective with Metro PD. A pause, heavy as the storm clouds overhead. What about you? Foreman at Morrison Construction. He recited the facts like reading from a grocery list. Married, daughter named Emma, 8 years old, divorced 2 years back. The cruiser's engine turned over on the first try, roaring to life with mechanical indifference to the emotional wreckage surrounding it. Jake disconnected the cables, movements sharp and precise, refusing to meet her gaze. Sarah's hand touched his arm as he turned to leave. Just a brief contact, but it burned through the wet fabric. Jake, I know I'm the last person you want to see. The last person I wanted to see left 10 years ago. His voice came out colder than he'd intended, frost coating each word. You're just an officer who needed a jump. Nothing more. He watched something flicker across her face, pain maybe, or regret, but she composed herself with the discipline of someone trained to hide weakness. From her wallet, she produced a business card, flipping it to write on the blank back with a pen that barely worked in the rain. If you ever need anything, I owe you. More than just this. The card read, Detective Sarah Anderson, Metro Police Department, in crisp professional font. Her personal cell number was scrawled on the reverse in handwriting he recognized. Loops and curves exactly as they'd been a decade ago. Jake pocketed the card without promises. Take care of yourself, Detective. Walking back to his truck felt like wading through concrete. Every step required conscious effort, his boots heavy with more than just rain and mud. In the rearview mirror, Sarah remained by her cruiser, one hand pressed to her chest as she watched him drive away. His phone buzzed before he'd made it 3 miles. Emma, texting from his mother's cell. Did you remember to buy milk? Grandma says we're out. The mundane reality of his life snapped back into focus. Milk. Homework. Getting Emma to school on time tomorrow. The careful routine he'd built since Rebecca walked out, leaving him with a 6-year-old and a mortgage he could barely afford. Sarah Anderson had no place in that world. She'd made that choice a long time ago. Martha Mitchell's house smelled like the cinnamon rolls she'd baked that afternoon, sweet warmth wrapping around Jake as he stepped inside. His mother looked up from where she sat with Emma at the kitchen table, the girls' math homework spread between them like a battlefield. Daddy! Emma launched herself at him with the full-body enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster. I got all my multiplication problems right, even the hard ones. Jake caught her, swung her up despite the protest of muscles that had spent all day hauling concrete blocks. That's my girl. Knew you could do it. Martha studied him with the unsettling perception of someone who'd changed his diapers and weathered every storm of his 38 years. You're quieter than usual. Something happen? Emma peered at him with equally suspicious eyes, her mother's eyes, brown and sharp, missing nothing. Did you meet someone, Daddy? You look sad. The word hit harder than it should have. Just ran into an old friend. Nobody important. An old friend who made you look like someone died? Martha stood, moving to pour coffee without asking if he wanted it. That kind of old friend has a name, usually. Jake waited until Emma was distracted by her backpack, checking that she'd packed everything for tomorrow. Sarah Anderson. His mother's hand paused halfway to the coffee pot. When she turned, her expression carried the particular mixture of sympathy and concern that mothers reserve for their children's deepest wounds. The one who left you before the wedding? She's a detective now. Car broke down on the highway. He accepted the coffee, letting the heat seep into his frozen fingers. Pure coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence, Jacob. Not when it comes to matters that tore your heart out and left it bleeding on the floor. Emma glanced up, confusion creasing her forehead. Grandma, what are you talking about? Adult stuff, sweetheart. Martha smoothed the girl's hair with gentle hands. Nothing for you to worry about. But Emma wasn't easily distracted. She possessed her father's stubbornness wrapped in her mother's determination, a combination that would either change the world or drive him to an early grave. Was Miss Anderson Daddy's girlfriend before Mommy? Jake set down his coffee before he could spill it. How do you know about that? Grandma told me you had your heart broken once, before you met Mommy. Emma's voice carried the careful tone of someone trying not to upset a skittish animal. Is Miss Anderson the one who broke your heart? Martha had the grace to look sheepish. She asked why you never dated anyone after the divorce. I thought she was old enough to understand that sometimes people get hurt, and it makes them scared to try again. I'm not scared. The lie tasted bitter even as he spoke it. I'm focused on being a good father. That's different. Emma climbed into his lap, all sharp elbows and bony knees, wrapping her arms around his neck. I don't want you to be sad, Daddy. Grandma says you used to smile more. Before Mommy left. The coffee cup sat forgotten on the table as Jake held his daughter, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. This was his life now. PTA meetings and science projects, and making sure Emma knew she was loved even when her mother only saw her every other weekend. Sarah Anderson belonged to a different version of himself, one who'd believed love conquered all and promises lasted forever. I smile plenty, kiddo, especially when I'm with you. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep in the truck on the drive home, after he'd carried her to bed and tucked her in with her worn, stuffed rabbit, Jake stood alone in his kitchen and pulled out Sarah's card. The handwriting mocked him with its familiarity. How many notes had she left him during their 2 years together? Stuck to his apartment door, tucked into his textbooks, scrawled on napkins at the campus coffee shop where they'd first met. Gone to class. Love you. Don't forget we have dinner with my parents tonight. You left your jacket at my place again. You'd forget your head if it wasn't attached. He'd kept every single one until the day she returned his engagement ring, left it on his kitchen counter with a note that said simply, I'm sorry. I can't do this. Then he'd burn them all, watch the paper curl and blacken in his bathroom sink while his world fell apart around him. The business card should join those ashes. There was no good reason to keep it, no possible future where reaching out to Sarah Anderson would lead anywhere except pain. Jake filed it in his wallet anyway, tucked behind his insurance card where he wouldn't see it every time he bought groceries. 3 days crawled by with a relentless monotony of routine. Wake at 5, make breakfast, get Emma ready for school, drop her at the bus stop, drive to whatever construction site Jim Morrison had them working. Today it was the elementary school renovation, replacing rotted window frames and outdated wiring in a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. His crew worked around him with comfortable efficiency born of years together. Joe Martinez, the crew leader, had been doing this dance since before Jake graduated high school. The man could eyeball a beam and know if it was a 1/4 inch off level. You've been distracted all week. Joe didn't look up from the window frame he was measuring, but his tone carried accusation. That's how people get hurt. Want to tell me what's eating you? Jake adjusted his grip on the cordless drill, fitting another screw into place with more force than necessary. Nothing. Just tired. Bullshit. I've seen you work 12-hour days and still have energy to joke around. This is different. Joe straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead with a bandana that had seen better years. Woman trouble? When isn't it woman trouble? Fair point. Rebecca giving you grief about Emma again? The mention of his ex-wife brought its own complicated tangle of emotions. Rebecca had moved back to town 6 months ago after her relationship in Denver imploded, suddenly very interested in being part of Emma's life again after 2 years of sporadic phone calls and forgotten birthdays. Rebecca's been quiet lately, surprisingly. Jake moved to the next window, losing himself in the familiar rhythm of work. This is something else. His phone buzzed in his pocket during lunch break. Unknown number, but the area code was local. Mitchell. Jake, it's Sarah. Her voice sounded different over the phone, more uncertain than it had during their rain-soaked reunion. I hope this isn't a bad time. Every muscle in his body went tense. Around him, the crew continued their various lunch activities, Joe arguing with Danny about last night's game, Marcus scrolling through his phone, Pete napping in his truck. Normal, everyday chaos. Jake walked away from them, seeking privacy behind a stack of lumber. What do you need, detective? I wanted to thank you properly. For helping with my car. Buy you dinner or something. A pause, and he could almost see her gathering courage on the other end. And maybe talk about what happened. You deserve an explanation. That was 10 years ago. Water under the bridge. Is it? The challenge in her voice sparked something in his chest, old anger he'd thought long buried. Because the way you looked at me in that rain, Jake, that wasn't someone who's moved on. His free hand clenched into a fist. She had no right to call him out, not after everything. What do you want from me, Sarah? Just coffee. Just 1 hour of your time. I need to explain why I left. You never gave me the chance to. You didn't want a chance. You wanted an escape route, and you took it. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, loud enough that Joe glanced over with concern creasing his weathered face. Jake turned away, lowering his voice. I spent a year trying to understand. Then I stopped trying and got on with my life. By marrying someone you didn't love? The accusation stole his breath. How could she possibly know that? You don't know anything about my marriage. I know you, Jake. Or I did. And I know what it looks like when you're in love. Her voice softened, vulnerable in a way that transported him back to late nights in her apartment, bodies tangled together as they planned impossible futures. The way you said your ex-wife's name just now? There's no warmth there. Not even anger. Just nothing. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong about Rebecca, about him, about everything, but the lie wouldn't form. What do you want me to say? Say you'll have coffee with me, Saturday. You pick the place, you set the terms. I just want a chance to apologize properly. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. This was how it started. Small concessions that led to bigger mistakes, old feelings resurging like floodwaters through broken levees. He'd rebuilt his life carefully after Sarah left, after Rebecca left, constructing walls that kept him safe and functioning and present for Emma. But some traitorous part of him, the part that had never quite healed, wanted to know why. Needed closure or revenge or something he couldn't name. Saturday, 1 hour. Tony's Italian on 5th. I'll be there at 7. Thank you, Jake. I'll see you then. The line went dead. Jake stared at his phone for a long moment, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Joe appeared at his elbow, concern etched into every line of his face. Everything okay? Yeah, just... Jake trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. It's complicated. Woman who got away came back? When Jake didn't answer, Joe nodded like that confirmed everything. Thought so. You've had that look all week. The one guys get when their past shows up demanding a conversation. She wants to apologize for leaving. And you said yes because you're hoping it'll give you closure. Joe clapped him on the shoulder, grip firm and grounding. Word of advice from someone who's made this mistake? There's no such thing as closure. There's only choosing whether you're going to let the past eat you alive or if you're going to bury it and move forward. Which did you choose? I tried burying it. Worked for about 15 years, till my ex-wife showed up at my daughter's wedding. Joe's laugh held no humor. Turns out some graves aren't deep enough. Now I'm stuck seeing her at every family event, making polite conversation while pretending I don't remember exactly how she destroyed me. The warning was clear. But Jake had already committed to Saturday, already opened the door he'd spent a decade keeping locked. He went back to work, throwing himself into the physical labor with enough intensity that by day's end, every muscle screamed for mercy. Maybe if he exhausted himself enough, he wouldn't lie awake thinking about green eyes and handwritten phone numbers. Emma noticed something was off the moment he picked her up from school. She climbed into the truck with her usual explosion of energy, backpack hitting the seat with a thud, but her smile faltered when she got a good look at his face. Bad day at work, Daddy? Just long. How was school? She launched into a detailed account of her day. Someone's hamster escaped during science class. Her best friend Lily got in trouble for passing notes. The cafeteria served pizza that tasted like cardboard. Normal 8-year-old problems that should have grounded him in the present. Instead, his mind kept drifting to Saturday, to what he'd say when he saw Sarah sitting across from him at Tony's, under the warm Italian lighting that made everyone look softer than they were. At home, Emma spread her homework across the kitchen table while Jake started dinner. Spaghetti, because it was Thursday, and Thursday meant pasta in their carefully constructed routine. The water was just starting to boil when Emma's voice cut through his thoughts. Daddy, are you scared of something? His hand slipped, nearly knocking the box of noodles off the counter. What makes you ask that? Grandma says when people get really quiet and far away, it's usually because they're scared. Emma didn't look up from her math worksheet, pencil moving in careful loops. You've been far away a lot lately. Jake turned off the stove, abandoning dinner to sit beside his daughter. She was too perceptive, too aware of emotional undercurrents for a kid her age. He blamed Rebecca for that. Emma had learned young to read moods, to gauge when her mother's attention might evaporate without warning. I'm not scared, baby. Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Is it about Miss Anderson? The lady who broke your heart? The directness of it caught him off guard. How do you know about her? I asked Grandma more questions after you left the other night. Emma finally set down her pencil, fixing him with eyes that saw far too much. She said you were going to marry Miss Anderson, but she got scared and ran away. And then you were sad for a really long time before you met Mommy. Martha and her big mouth. Though, in fairness, Emma could extract information from a stone if she set her mind to it. That's basically what happened, yeah. Are you going to see her again? No point lying. Emma would find out eventually, and he'd promised himself after the divorce that he'd always be honest with her, even when the truth was complicated. We're having coffee on Saturday. She wants to apologize. Emma considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Do you want her to apologize? Did he? Jake wasn't sure anymore. The anger that had sustained him through the first year had long since cooled to something more like scar tissue. Still there, still tender when pressed, but not actively bleeding. I want to understand why she left. Maybe that'll help me stop wondering about it. Okay. Emma returned to her homework as if they'd been discussing what to have for breakfast. But if she makes you sad again, you should tell her to go away. You deserve to be happy, Daddy. The simple wisdom of children. Jake pulled her into a hug, holding tight while she squirmed and laughed. When did you get so smart? I was born this way. You're just slow at noticing. Saturday arrived with the inexorable march of calendar pages. Jake spent the morning at Emma's soccer game. She played defense with more enthusiasm than skill, mostly running in circles and occasionally remembering to chase the ball. Rebecca showed up halfway through, standing on the opposite sideline in designer sunglasses that probably cost more than Jake's monthly grocery budget. After the game, they lost 4-2, but Emma scored a goal that had her glowing for the entire drive home. Rebecca approached while Emma was distracted with juice boxes and orange slices. She's getting better. Rebecca's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the expression she wore when forcing pleasantries. You've been practicing with her? Every weekend she's with me, rain or shine. Jake kept his tone neutral, refusing to rise to whatever bait she was laying. You could practice with her too, on your weekends. I would if she didn't spend half her time with me asking when she gets to go back to your place. The words carried an edge, resentment bleeding through the polite facade. She's obsessed with that volcano project you're doing together. Sarah helped with that, actually. She knows chemistry from her forensics training. He regretted the words the instant they left his mouth. Rebecca's expression shifted from vaguely annoyed to sharp and predatory. Sarah? As in Sarah Anderson? Your ex-fiancée, Sarah? She's back in town. Works for Metro PD. Emma met her when... You introduced our daughter to the woman who left you at the altar? Rebecca's voice climbed in pitch, drawing attention from nearby parents. Are you insane? It wasn't at the altar. It was 3 weeks before. And I didn't introduce them on purpose. Sarah stopped by while I was helping Emma with homework. Another lie, but a necessary one. Rebecca didn't need to know about the coffee shop meeting, the deliberate choice to let Sarah into their lives. This is exactly what I was afraid of when I moved back. You dating random women and exposing Emma to unstable relationships. Rebecca crossed her arms, body language shifting into full combat mode. We need to talk about modifying the custody arrangement. Ice shot through Jake's veins. There's nothing to modify. Our agreement is working fine. Our daughter is spending time with your ex-girlfriend, Jake. That's not fine. That's confusing for a child her age. Rebecca pulled out her phone, typing something with sharp, angry jabs. I'm calling my lawyer Monday morning. She stalked off before he could respond, leaving him standing in the aftermath of a bomb he hadn't seen coming. Across the field, Emma laughed with her teammates, oblivious to the legal threat gathering on the horizon. This was why he should have stayed away from Sarah. Nothing good came from reopening old wounds, only fresh bleeding and collateral damage to everyone around him. But he'd committed to tonight, and Jake Mitchell didn't break promises, even ones that might destroy everything he'd built. Tony's Italian restaurant occupied a converted house on 5th Street, all warm brick and trailing ivy that made it look like something transplanted from Tuscany. Jake had been coming here since before Emma was born, back when he and Rebecca were still pretending their marriage wasn't a slow-motion car crash. The owner, Tony Ricci, greeted him at the door with the familiar enthusiasm of an old friend. Jake! Haven't seen you in a month! You finally bringing a lady friend? Something like that. Jake scanned the dining room, stomach tight with an anxiety that felt uncomfortably close to anticipation. She should be here soon. Tony showed him to a corner table, the kind that offered privacy without being suspiciously isolated. Jake ordered a beer and checked his watch. 7 o'clock exactly. If Sarah was the same person she'd been 10 years ago, she'd arrive 5 minutes early, constitutionally incapable of being late. At 6:55, the door chimed. Sarah stepped inside, and Jake's carefully constructed composure crumbled like sugar glass. She'd dressed in jeans and a dark sweater, hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in the severe bun she'd worn in uniform. Without the badge and the authority it conferred, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd fallen for in a campus coffee shop when they were both too young to know better. She spotted him, and something complicated flickered across her face. Relief mixed with fear, mixed with something else he didn't want to name. Her approach seemed to take forever, and no time at all. "You actually came." She slid into the seat across from him, fingers worrying at the strap of her purse. "I wasn't sure you would. I keep my word, even when I probably shouldn't." Jake took a long pull from his beer, needing something to do with his hands. "You wanted to explain. So explain." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the water glass Tony had brought with her arrival. The movement drew Jake's attention to details he'd been trying to ignore. The absence of rings on her fingers, the faint scar along her left thumb that hadn't been there before, the way she still bit her lower lip when nervous. "I don't know where to start." Her voice came out smaller than he'd ever heard it, the confident detective from the highway replaced by someone who looked lost. "I've rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times in my head, and now that you're sitting here, all those words feel inadequate." Jake leaned back in his chair, arms crossed in a posture he recognized as defensive even as he adopted it. "Try the beginning. The part where you decided 3 weeks before our wedding that you couldn't go through with it." The waiter appeared with menus, oblivious to the emotional minefield he'd wandered into. Sarah ordered wine without looking at the options. Jake requested another beer, and they sat in silence until the server retreated. "I was terrified." She spoke to the table rather than meeting his eyes. "Not of you, not of marriage specifically, but of the permanence, of making a choice that would define the rest of my life before I'd figured out who I was." "You were 26. I was 28. Plenty of people get married younger." Even as he spoke, Jake recognized the hollowness of the argument. Age was just a number. Maturity was something else entirely. "My parents divorced when I was 12. Sarah's fingers traced patterns on the condensation of her water glass. "I watched my mother try to build a life after 15 years of being someone's wife, and she didn't know who she was anymore. Everything had been defined by my father. Where we lived, what she did, who her friends were. When he left, she was just empty." The waiter returned with drinks. Sarah took a long sip of her wine before continuing, gathering courage from somewhere deep inside. "I swore I'd never end up like that. I'd establish myself first, have a career, know exactly who I was as an individual before I became someone's wife." She finally looked at him, and the raw honesty in her expression hit him like a physical blow. "Then I met you, and all those carefully constructed plans went out the window. We were engaged within a year, planning a wedding, talking about kids and houses and forever. And suddenly I was 26 and terrified I was making the same mistake my mother did." Jake's grip tightened on his beer bottle. The explanation made sense in a way that infuriated him, logical and reasonable and completely insufficient to excuse the devastation she'd left in her wake. "So you ran to California, found yourself at the police academy." "I joined the force thinking it would make me strong, independent. someone who didn't need anyone else to feel complete. Bitterness crept into her tone, self-directed and sharp. Spent 5 years on patrol in San Jose. Made detective. Dated men who meant nothing and forgot them the moment they walked out the door. Convinced myself I'd made the right choice. And now? The question emerged rougher than intended, carrying a decade's worth of unresolved anger and hurt and something dangerously close to hope. Sarah's laugh held no humor. Now I'm 36 years old, sitting across from the man I never stopped loving, trying to explain why I was too much of a coward to fight for us when it mattered. The words hung between them like smoke from a fire neither could extinguish. Jake wanted to grab them, examine them, demand clarification, but the waiter chose that moment to return, asking if they were ready to order. They selected food neither wanted, going through the motions of civilized dining while emotional chaos roared beneath the surface. Once alone again, Jake forced himself to ask the question that had haunted him for a decade. Why come back here? There are detective positions in every major city. Why this one? The directness seemed to catch her off guard. Color crept into Sarah's cheeks, visible even in the restaurant's warm lighting. I knew you were here. I'd been keeping tabs. Nothing creepy, just occasional searches on social media, seeing what you were up to. His stomach dropped. You've been watching me for 10 years? Not watching, just checking in, making sure you were okay. She rushed the words out, defensive and ashamed. I saw when you got married, when Emma was born, when your relationship status changed to divorced. And I told myself I was happy for you, that you'd moved on and built a good life. But I was lying. The confession came out barely above a whisper. When the position opened up here, I had offers from Portland and San Diego. Both paid more, both had better career prospects. I chose this city because I needed to know if what we had was real, or if I'd built it up in my memory to justify my regret. Food arrived, chicken parmesan for her, lasagna for him, both plates steaming and fragrant. Neither made a move to eat. The revelation had shifted something between them, changing the atmosphere from confrontational to dangerous in ways Jake couldn't fully process. You didn't answer my question that night in the rain. He met her eyes, refusing to let her hide. I asked if you came back because of me, and you deflected. Now I'm asking again. Did you manipulate the job placement to get close to me? Sarah's spine straightened, detective mode sliding into place like armor. I didn't manipulate anything. The department offered the position based on my qualifications. But did I accept it, hoping I might run into you? Yes. Did I imagine what I'd say if we met again? Every single day, for 2 years. And then my truck battery saved you from having to manufacture a meeting. Jake picked up his fork, more for something to do than from any real appetite. Convenient timing, that breakdown. Right where I'd be driving home from picking up Emma. The accusation sparked anger in her expression, quick and hot. Are you seriously suggesting I sabotaged my own vehicle to engineer a reunion? That's paranoid even for someone with trust issues. Trust issues. Jake let the words settle between them like stones. Yeah, I wonder where those came from. They ate in tense silence, the food turning to ash in his mouth. Around them, other diners laughed and talked, oblivious to the small war being waged in the corner booth. Tony caught Jake's eye from across the room, concern evident, but Jake shook his head slightly. This wasn't the kind of problem the restaurant owner could solve with extra breadsticks. Sarah pushed her barely touched chicken around her plate, creating abstract patterns in the marinara sauce. I saw you with her, Emma, at the coffee shop last week. Jake's fork clattered against his plate. You were there? Sitting 3 tables over, behind the support column. You were helping her with that volcano project, and she was so excited, and you were so patient even when she knocked over the baking soda. A smile ghosted across Sarah's face, sad and wistful. You're a good father. Better than you probably give yourself credit for. The observation should have pleased him. Instead, it felt invasive, like she'd been studying his life through a window he hadn't known existed. Emma's everything to me. I won't let anyone hurt her, and that includes exposing her to people who might disappear without warning. The implication landed like he'd intended, a direct hit that made Sarah flinch. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that, honestly. But I need you to know I didn't come back planning to disrupt your life. I just wanted to see if maybe, possibly, there was still something between us worth exploring. Exploring. Jake tested the word, found it wanting. That's a clinical way to describe it. What would you call it? A mistake. A disaster waiting to happen. A way to guarantee Emma gets caught in the crossfire when you decide commitment is too scary again. He drained the rest of his beer, signaling for another even though he was driving. I spent a year after you left barely functional. Went to work, came home, stared at walls. My crew staged an intervention because I almost got someone killed being distracted on a job site. Sarah's face had gone pale. I didn't know. How could you? You were in California, finding yourself while I was falling apart. The bitterness tasted familiar, a flavor he'd thought he'd purged, but apparently only buried. Then I met Rebecca. Sweet, stable, uncomplicated Rebecca who wanted the same things I did. House, family, normal life. And I married her even though I didn't love her, because I thought maybe love didn't matter as much as compatibility. Jake, let me finish. He waited until she nodded before continuing. The whole marriage, I was waiting to feel something. Anything close to what I felt with you. It never came. Rebecca knew it. I knew it. We just pretended everything was fine until Emma was old enough that the divorce wouldn't completely traumatize her. You want to know the worst part? I still don't regret it because Emma exists. But I regret lying to Rebecca for 6 years. I regret making her feel like she was competing with a ghost she could never beat. The confession hung between them, heavier than anything said so far. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she blinked them back with the discipline of someone trained not to show weakness. I'm sorry. The words sounded inadequate even to his own ears. That's all I can say. I'm sorry I hurt you. Sorry I wasn't brave enough. Sorry I've spent a decade being too much of a coward to come back and fix it. If I could go back and change things, I would do it in a heartbeat. Jake's third beer arrived. He stared at it without drinking, watching condensation bead on the bottle's surface. Why now? Why not 5 years ago, or 3, or before I got married? Because 5 years ago, I was still lying to myself. 3 years ago, I was dating someone else, trying to convince myself he was good enough. And before you got married? She paused, struggling with something internal. I almost called you the week before your wedding. Had the phone in my hand, your number dialed, finger hovering over the call button. Why didn't you? Because you deserved to be happy. You deserved someone who wouldn't run when things got hard. I thought maybe Rebecca could give you that. The music changed to something slow and Italian, a tenor crooning about lost love and second chances. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, Jake's phone buzzed. Emma, texting from Martha's house where she was spending the night. Having so much fun with Grandma. We made cookies and she's teaching me to knit. He showed Sarah the message, watching her expression soften as she read it. She seems like an amazing kid. She is. Too smart for her own good. Asks questions that would stump a philosophy professor. Pride crept into his voice despite his best efforts to maintain emotional distance. Wants to be a scientist. Studies volcanoes and plate tectonics like other kids study cartoon characters. The project at the coffee shop. That's why you were researching chemical reactions. She's got a presentation next month. I'm helping her build a scale model that actually erupts. He pocketed his phone, the brief interruption having given him time to resettle his defenses. But we're not here to talk about Emma. You wanted to explain yourself. So explain why you think any of this matters now. Sarah pushed her plate away, food barely touched. Because I've spent 10 years in a career that's supposed to be about justice and truth. And the whole time I've been living a lie. Pretending I made the right choice, pretending I don't lie awake at night thinking about what our life could have been. Our life would have been ordinary. Working class ordinary, not the decorated detective career you built. He couldn't keep the edge from his voice. I'm a foreman for a construction company. I make decent money, but it's not executive salary. We would have had a modest house, 2 kids maybe, date nights at places like this because we couldn't afford anything fancier. Is that really what you want? Or is this just nostalgia making the past look better than it was? The question seemed to genuinely stun her. She sat back, processing, and Jake could see the exact moment she understood what he was really asking, not whether she regretted leaving, but whether she could actually handle the reality of what staying would have meant. I don't care about money. Her voice carried conviction, but he'd heard convicted criminals sound equally sincere about their innocence. I've had the career, the promotions, the respect. None of it filled the hole you left. Pretty words. Jake finally took a drink from his 3rd beer, knowing he'd regret it in the morning, but needing the liquid courage for what came next. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. You walked away once already. What makes you think I'd ever trust you enough to risk it again? I can't give you guarantees. I can't promise I won't mess up or get scared or make mistakes. Sarah leaned forward, intensity radiating from her like heat. But I can promise I'm not the same person who ran. 10 years of living with consequences taught me that running from problems doesn't solve them. It just means you carry them wherever you go. Touching. But I have Emma to think about now. She's already dealing with her mother being inconsistent and unreliable. I won't add another unstable adult to her life. He meant it as a deterrent, a wall she couldn't scale. But something shifted in Sarah's expression, determination replacing uncertainty. Then let me prove it. No expectations, no pressure. Just give me a chance to show you I've changed. She reached across the table, hand stopping just short of touching his. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back or even give me hope. I'm asking for the opportunity to demonstrate through actions, not words, that I'm worth a second look. The server appeared, asking about dessert. They both declined, and Jake requested the check before Sarah could argue about who was paying. She let him take it without protest, seeming to understand that this small act of control mattered to him. Outside, the October night had turned cold, temperature dropping with the sun. Sarah hugged herself against the chill, having left her jacket in the car. Jake's instinct was to offer his coat, the way he always had, but he suppressed it. Those kinds of gestures belonged to a different version of them, one that no longer existed. "Thank you for hearing me out." Sarah's breath misted in the air between them. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know I never stopped regretting what I did." Jake studied her in the streetlight's glow, cataloging the ways age had changed her. Fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, a hardness to her jaw that spoke of difficult decisions and long nights. But underneath, he could still see traces of the woman he'd loved, the one who'd laugh at his terrible jokes, who'd fall asleep during movies with her head on his shoulder, who'd made him believe in happily ever after. "I don't know what you're expecting from this." He kept his distance, afraid that closing the gap would undo all his carefully maintained resolve. "I can't just forgive and forget. Emma comes first, always. And bringing someone into her life who might leave again, I can't do that to her." "I understand." Sarah pulled her keys from her purse, the jangle loud in the quiet street. "But if you ever want to talk, or if you need anything, you have my number. No strings, no expectations. Just, I'm here. If you want me to be." She walked to her car, a sensible sedan, not the cruiser, and drove away without looking back. Jake stood on the sidewalk long after her taillights disappeared, trying to sort through the emotional wreckage of the evening. His phone buzzed again. Not Emma this time, but Martha. "How did it go?" Jake typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Complicated. Tell you tomorrow." The drive home passed in a blur. His house felt emptier than usual without Emma's chaos filling it, just him and silence and too many thoughts he couldn't organize. He poured himself a whiskey he didn't want, sat on the porch in the cold, and let himself remember. Their first kiss, outside that coffee shop, her tasting like caramel and sugar. Moving into their first apartment together, nothing but second-hand furniture and big dreams. The night he proposed, down on one knee in the park where they'd had their first real conversation, ring box shaking in his nervous hands. Her saying yes, crying and laughing at the same time. Then the harder memories. The growing distance in those final weeks. Her increasingly frequent mentions of not being ready. The night she'd come to him with red eyes and a confession he hadn't wanted to hear. The emptiness after, like someone had scooped out his insides and left him hollow. He'd survived it, built a life, had a daughter, created routines and structures that kept him functioning. Sarah's return threatened all of that stability, opening wounds he'd thought scarred over. But God help him, seeing her again had reminded him what it felt like to be fully alive. 3 days passed in careful normalcy. Work, Emma, dinners, homework, bedtime stories. He didn't mention Sarah to his daughter, didn't examine too closely why he'd kept the dinner a secret. Martha asked once how it went. He'd deflected with practiced ease, changing the subject to Emma's upcoming school play. Thursday evening, while Emma was at Rebecca's for her bi-weekly overnight, Jake's doorbell rang. He opened it to find Sarah standing on his porch in uniform, looking official and uncomfortable in equal measure. "This isn't a social call." She kept her hands at her sides, posture rigid. "There's been a series of thefts from construction sites in the area. Your site specifically was hit last night. I'm the lead detective on the case." Professional distance settled over her like a cloak, transforming her into Detective Anderson rather than Sarah, who'd poured her heart out over Italian food. Jake matched her tone, keeping his voice neutral. "What was taken?" "Copper wiring, power tools, approximately $8,000 worth of materials, according to your site manager's inventory. She pulled out a notepad, flipping to a marked page. The theft occurred between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Security cameras were disabled, suggesting someone with knowledge of the site layout. You think it's an inside job? I think whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for and how to avoid detection. Sarah's eyes scanned his face, professional assessment mixing with something more personal. I need to interview your crew. Get a sense of who might have financial problems, grudges, connections to criminal elements. Jake's jaw tightened. My guys are solid. I've worked with most of them for over a decade. I'm sure they are, but statistically, most construction site thefts involve current or former employees. She softened slightly, letting a hint of Sarah through the detective facade. I'm not trying to attack your judgment. I'm trying to recover stolen property and prevent future incidents. He let her in, watching her assess his home with the trained eye of someone who read crime scenes for a living. The analysis made him self-conscious about the stack of Emma's drawings on the fridge, the pile of unfolded laundry on the couch, the general lived-in chaos of a single father's house. Sarah didn't comment on the mess. Instead, she moved to the kitchen table, spreading out photos of the crime scene. Walk me through the site security. Who has access codes? Who knows the camera positions? They spent an hour going through details, Jake providing information while trying not to notice how her hair fell forward when she leaned over the photos, or the way she chewed her pen cap when thinking, or the familiar scent of her perfume. Different brand than 10 years ago, but the same bass notes of vanilla and something floral. I'll need contact information for your entire crew. Sarah was all business, typing notes into her phone with efficient precision. Also, any subcontractors, delivery drivers, anyone who's been on site in the past month. Joe Martinez has all that. I'll text him, have him send it to you directly. Jake pulled out his phone, composing the message while hyper-aware of her proximity. He's not going to like this. None of them will. Being questioned by police feels like an accusation even when you're innocent. I'll be as discreet as possible. She tucked her notepad away, preparing to leave. Thank you for cooperating. I know this is awkward given everything. You're doing your job. I respect that. He walked her to the door, maintaining careful distance. For what it's worth, I hope you find whoever did this. Those tools represent weeks of work for some of these guys. Sarah paused on the threshold, silhouetted against the porch light. Jake, I want you to know I didn't request this case because of our connection. It was assigned to me randomly. If you'd prefer someone else handle it. No. The word came out more forcefully than intended. You're good at your job, and I want good police work on this. Personal history doesn't matter compared to getting results. Something flickered across her expression. Gratitude, maybe? Or relief. I'll keep you updated on the investigation. And Jake, the dinner the other night. I meant everything I said. But I understand if you need space to process. She left before he could respond, cruiser pulling away with professional slowness. Jake stood in his doorway watching taillights fade, wondering when his life had become so complicated. His phone rang minutes later. Rebecca, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk about Emma. Ice flooded his veins. Is she okay? Did something happen? She's fine. Physically. The emphasis suggested other problems loomed. But she just spent 20 minutes telling me all about Miss Sarah, the nice police lady who's friends with Daddy and knows all about volcanoes and is really pretty and makes Daddy smile. The betrayal hit hard. Emma had promised not to mention Sarah to her mother, understanding without being told that it would cause problems. But 8-year-olds couldn't keep secrets worth a damn, especially when excited about something. Sarah's a detective working a case involving my job site. Emma met her once, briefly, when Sarah stopped by to ask about security protocols. The lie came easier than it should have, practiced deception rolling off his tongue. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Rebecca's voice climbed an octave. You're introducing our daughter to the woman who broke your heart, the one you spent years being miserable over, and you think that's not a big deal? I didn't introduce them. Emma was home when Sarah came by on official police business. They exchanged maybe 5 sentences. Another lie, stacking on the first. You're making this into something it's not. Am I? Because Emma says Miss Sarah helped with her volcano project. That sounds like more than a 5-sentence interaction. Papers rustled in the background, Rebecca moving with agitated energy. I'm calling my lawyer Monday. We're modifying the custody arrangement. The threat crystallized the vague anxiety he'd been carrying since Saturday into sharp, immediate fear. On what grounds? I'm a good father. Emma's thriving. On the grounds that you're exposing our daughter to unstable romantic entanglements. Sarah left you once, Jake. What happens when she does it again and Emma's attached to her? You think our daughter can handle another abandonment after what she went through with me? The accusation stung because it mirrored his own fears, the ones he'd been trying to suppress. I'm not in a relationship with Sarah. We're not dating. She's investigating a crime. But you want to be. Rebecca's voice shifted from angry to something more complex, hurt mixed with resignation, mixed with bitter acceptance. I can hear it in your voice. You're still in love with her, just like you were throughout our entire marriage. Jake couldn't deny it, and the silence stretched long enough to serve as confirmation. That's what I thought. Rebecca's laugh held no humor. You know what the worst part is? I knew going in that you didn't love me. I thought I could make it enough. Thought if I was patient and supportive and everything she wasn't, you'd eventually choose me for real instead of just as a consolation prize. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. The apology felt insufficient, a Band-Aid on a wound that needed surgery. But you did. Every time you looked at me and I could see you wishing I was someone else. Every time you pulled away when I tried to get close. Every time you said you loved me and I could hear the lie underneath. She took a shaky breath, composing herself. I deserve better than being someone's second choice. And Emma deserves a father who isn't distracted by his past. My past isn't interfering with Emma. She's my priority, always. He meant it, even as doubt crept in around the edges. You're right that I wasn't fair to you during our marriage. I should have been honest instead of pretending. But that doesn't mean I'm a bad father. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying you're about to make choices that could hurt our daughter, and I'm not going to stand by and watch it happen. Rebecca's tone shifted to something more formal, the voice she used for professional discussions. Expect a call from my attorney. We'll discuss this through proper legal channels. The line went dead. Jake stood in his kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, processing the wreckage of a conversation that had just blown up his carefully structured life. Friday morning brought Joe Martinez to his door before 6 a.m., the crew leader's expression grim. We need to talk before the cops show up. Jake poured coffee while Joe paced his kitchen, agitation evident in every movement. What's going on? Danny Torres. He's been acting weird all week. Jumpy, avoiding questions, disappeared for 2 hours yesterday during a lunch break. Joe accepted the mug without sitting, too wired to stay still. I didn't think much of it until the detective called asking about financial problems among the crew. Danny's got gambling debts. Jake knew this already, had even loaned the kid money last year to help clear them. but he's not stupid enough to steal from his own site. You sure about that? Because I did some asking around, and apparently those debts are worse than we knew. He's into a bookie for 15 grand, and they're not the patient type. Joe finally sat, deflating with the weight of suspicion. I don't want to believe it either. Kid's been with us 3 years, never caused problems. But if he's desperate enough. The doorbell interrupted them. Sarah stood on the porch in business casual, notepad already out. Mr. Martinez? I'm Detective Anderson. I believe we spoke on the phone? She nodded at Jake with professional courtesy that revealed nothing of their complicated history. Joe glanced between them, clearly sensing undercurrents, but too focused on the investigation to pursue them. The interview lasted 40 minutes, Sarah extracting information with practiced efficiency. Joe confirmed the camera blind spots, the security code rotation schedule, which crew members had worked late in the past week. He also, reluctantly, mentioned Danny's financial situation. I want to be clear. I'm not accusing anyone. Joe's discomfort was obvious, loyalty warring with duty. But you asked about money problems, and Danny's the only one I know who's in serious trouble. Sarah made notes without judgment. I'll need to speak with Mr. Torres. Can you have him contact me today? After Joe left, Sarah lingered in the doorway. The professional mask slipped slightly, revealing the woman underneath. I heard about Rebecca, the custody threat. Small town, news travels fast. Jake leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion seeping into his bones. Guess Emma told her mother about meeting you. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause problems with your co-parenting situation. Genuine regret colored her words. If you need me to speak with Rebecca, explain that our contact has been purely professional. That would be a lie. He met her eyes, refusing to pretend. It stopped being purely professional the moment I agreed to dinner. We both know that. Sarah bit her lip, the gesture so familiar it hurt. What do you want me to do? I can back off, stay strictly business, disappear from your life again if that's what you need. I don't know what I need. The confession felt like weakness, but he was too tired to maintain pretenses. Part of me wants to see where this goes. The rest of me knows that's insane, that I'm risking everything I've built for something that already proved it can't work. We're not the same people we were. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel her body heat. Maybe that's what needs to change for this to work. Accepting that we failed the first time because we weren't ready, not because we weren't right for each other. Jake's phone shattered the moment with its insistent buzzing. Martha, calling about Emma. He answered to find his daughter on the other end, voice small and scared in a way that sent his protective instincts into overdrive. Daddy? Mommy's really mad. She says I'm not supposed to talk about Miss Sarah anymore. And she keeps asking questions about whether you have a girlfriend. And I don't know what to say. Emma's words tumbled out in a rush, 8-year-old panic evident. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Jake moved away from Sarah, needing privacy for this conversation. Mommy's just worried about you, that's all. Sometimes adults get confused about things. Is Miss Sarah your girlfriend? Because Mommy says she is, but you said she was just a friend. The question held the weight of a child trying to navigate adult complexities beyond her understanding. I don't want you and Mommy to fight because of me. Listen to me very carefully, baby girl. None of this is your fault. Adult relationships are complicated, and sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, or get scared, or don't know how to talk to each other properly. But that has nothing to do with you. He could feel Sarah's presence behind him, listening. You're the most important person in my life. Everything I do is to make sure you're happy and safe. Promise? Emma's voice wavered. Promise. Now how about you and Grandma make those cookies you were talking about, and I'll come pick you up after work, okay? He injected false cheer into his tone, hoping it would transfer through the phone line. We'll have movie night. Your choice. Emma brightened at the prospect, her resilience a reminder of why he fought so hard to protect her. They said their goodbyes, and Jake turned to find Sarah had moved to his kitchen table, giving him space for the conversation. You're good with her. Sarah's observation carried no judgment, just quiet acknowledgement. Patient, present, everything a father should be. She deserves that. Deserves better than parents who can't figure out how to put her first. He poured himself more coffee, the morning already feeling endless despite barely being 7 a.m. Rebecca's scared I'm going to repeat our marriage pattern with you. Getting involved with someone I love more than I loved her, which will somehow hurt Emma. Is she wrong? The directness of the question deserved an honest answer. I don't know. I spent 6 years married to a woman I cared about but didn't love, and it damaged everyone involved. Now you're back, and I can feel myself falling into old patterns, and I'm terrified of making the same mistakes. Sarah stood, closing the distance between them until only inches separated their bodies. Then maybe we don't repeat patterns. Maybe we build something new, something neither of us has tried before. Like what? Like taking it slow. Like being honest about our fears instead of running from them. Like putting Emma first and making sure whatever happens between us doesn't hurt her. Sarah's hand rose, hovering near his face without quite making contact. I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm worth the risk. Jake's resolve crumbled under the weight of her proximity and his own loneliness. He closed the gap, capturing her lips in a kiss that felt like coming home after years of wandering lost. She responded with matching intensity, hands fisting in his shirt as a decade of separation compressed into this single moment of connection. They broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, both trembling from the force of emotions unleashed. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I missed you. God, I missed you so much. This is a mistake. Even as he spoke, Jake's hands refused to release her, holding tight like she might disappear if he let go. Rebecca's going to use this against me in court. Emma's going to get confused and hurt. Nothing good can come from this. Then let it be our mistake. Sarah kissed him again, softer this time, tender rather than desperate. Let's be honest about how messy and complicated this is, and choose it anyway. The kitchen clock ticked toward 7:30. Jake had a site to get to, materials to order, a crew to manage. Sarah had an investigation to pursue, interviews to conduct, evidence to process. The real world waited with all its demands and complications. But for these stolen moments, they let themselves exist in possibility rather than consequence, in hope rather than fear, in the fragile beginning of something that might, just might, be worth the risk. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Jake went to work with Sarah's taste still on his lips, trying to focus on inventory counts and foundation inspections, while his mind replayed the way her fingers had tangled in his hair. The crew noticed his distraction. Joe raised an eyebrow when Jake measured the same beam 3 times, getting different numbers each attempt. You sick or something? Joe's concern carried an edge of suspicion. You've been off all morning. Didn't sleep well. The lie sat heavy on Jake's tongue, but the truth was too complicated to unpack on a construction site. Rebecca's pushing for a custody modification got me stressed. That much was honest enough. The legal papers had arrived by courier at 10 a.m. delivered to the site because Rebecca knew it would embarrass him in front of his crew. Danny Torres had watched the exchange with particular intensity, his nervousness spiking visibly when the courier mentioned court documents. Sarah arrived at lunch, her sedan pulling up to the site trailer with official purpose. She'd changed from the casual clothes she'd worn at his house into full detective mode, slacks, blazer, badge prominent on her belt. The transformation was complete, no trace of the woman who'd kissed him 3 hours ago visible in her professional demeanor. "Mr. Torres, I need to speak with you regarding the theft investigation." Her voice carried across the site, drawing attention from every crew member within earshot. Danny went pale. At 24, he still had the gangly build of someone who hadn't quite grown into his frame, all knees and elbows and nervous energy. His hands shook as he set down his sandwich. "I didn't do anything." "Then you won't mind answering some questions." Sarah's tone gave nothing away, neither accusatory nor reassuring. "We can do this here or at the station. Your choice." The implication was clear: cooperate voluntarily or be brought in officially. Danny glanced at Jake, desperation written across his features, silently begging for intervention. Jake had known this kid since he was fresh out of trade school, had vouched for him when no other contractor would take a chance on someone with no experience. "Go with her, Danny. Tell the truth and you'll be fine." Jake put more confidence into the words than he felt. If Danny had stolen from the site, the truth would destroy him. They disappeared into the trailer, Sarah closing the door firmly behind them. The rest of the crew exchanged looks, weighted with speculation and judgment. Marcus Williams, a grizzled carpenter who'd been in construction longer than Jake had been alive, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Kid's guilty. You can see it written all over him." Marcus had the cynicism of someone who'd watched too many promising young workers self-destruct. "Probably figured he could grab a few tools, pawn them, cover his debts. Tale as old as time." "We don't know that," Jake defended Danny reflexively, even as doubt gnawed at his certainty. "Innocent until proven guilty." "Sure, and I'm the Queen of England." Marcus returned to his lunch, the conversation closed as far as he was concerned. Joe pulled Jake aside, voice low enough that the others couldn't hear. "If it is Danny, what are you gonna do? Kid's got potential, but if he stole from us, there's no coming back from that." "Fire him. Press charges. Whatever Detective Anderson, recommends." Jake corrected himself quickly, aware of ears that might be listening. "But I'm not throwing him under the bus until we have proof." "Your call, boss. Just remember that loyalty goes both ways. You protect someone who betrayed the crew, and you'll lose their respect." Joe's warning carried the weight of experience. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. The trailer door opened 40 minutes later. Danny emerged looking worse than when he'd entered. Red-eyed, shoulders slumped, moving like a condemned man. Sarah followed at a professional distance, expression neutral. "Mr. Torres has agreed to provide fingerprints and alibi verification for the night in question." Her announcement was for the benefit of the crew, putting everyone on notice that the investigation was active and thorough. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Torres." Danny nodded mutely and stumbled toward his truck, clearly done with work for the day. Sarah caught Jake's eye, a subtle head tilt toward her car. He followed, maintaining enough distance to suggest official business rather than personal connection. Inside her vehicle, away from curious eyes, she dropped the detective facade. "He's lying about something. I don't know if it's the theft or just the gambling debts, but his story has holes you could drive a truck through."
"You think he did it?"
Jake kept his gaze forward, watching Danny's truck peel out of the parking area with reckless speed.
"I think he knows more than he's saying."
His alibi for that night is his girlfriend, who conveniently can't be reached for verification because she's visiting family in Oregon. Sarah flipped through her notes, pointing out inconsistencies. He also got defensive when I asked about his finances, claimed the debts were under control when every indicator suggests otherwise. Jake's jaw tightened. If Danny was involved, it meant Jake's judgment had failed. He'd hired the kid, trained him, defended him when others questioned his work ethic. The betrayal would sting on multiple levels. What's your next step? Talk to the girlfriend once she's back. Check pawn shops for the stolen tools. Pull Danny's phone records to see if he was in contact with anyone suspicious. She paused, studying Jake's profile with an intensity that made his skin prickle. And try to keep professional distance from you, which is getting harder by the hour.
The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Jake turned to face her fully, taking in the slight flush to her cheeks, the way her fingers drummed against her notepad. Tells that betrayed nervousness beneath the professional exterior.
This morning was a mistake.
He forced the words out, needing to establish boundaries before they both got hurt.
Rebecca's lawyers are going to paint me as an unfit father because I'm dating the woman who left me. If I give them ammunition by actually dating you, I could lose Emma.
So what are you saying? Sarah's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened where she gripped the steering wheel. That we pretend it didn't happen? Go back to being strangers?
I'm saying we need to be smart about this. For Emma's sake, if nothing else.
Jake rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling at every muscle.
She's already confused about why her mother's upset. If she finds out I'm involved with you, and then the custody battle gets ugly, she'll blame herself. Sarah's professional mask cracked, revealing hurt underneath. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your daughter. Emma comes first, I get that. But don't tell me that kiss meant nothing, because I can see in your eyes that you're lying. It meant everything. That's the problem. The confession escaped before he could stop it. 10 years ago, you were the only thing that mattered. Then you left, and I had to learn how to function without you. I built a life, had a child, created something stable. Now you're back, and I can feel all those walls I built starting to crumble. Maybe they need to crumble. She reached across the console, hand covering his. Maybe you've been protecting yourself so hard that you forgot how to actually live. The contact sent electricity through his system, a jolt of connection that terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Jake pulled away before he could do something stupid like kiss her again in broad daylight where anyone could see. I have to get back to work. He reached for the door handle, needing distance to think clearly. Keep me updated on the investigation. And Sarah, thank you for being gentle with Danny. Whatever he did or didn't do, he's still just a kid trying to survive. Her expression softened. That's one of the things I always loved about you. You see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. Jake climbed out of the car before he could respond, knowing that any reply would only make leaving harder. Behind him, Sarah sat in her sedan for a long moment before driving away, and he felt the loss of her presence like a physical ache. The weekend arrived with Emma's return from Rebecca's house. His daughter burst through the door with her usual hurricane of energy, backpack flying, shoes kicked off mid-stride, already talking before she'd fully entered. Daddy, guess what? Miss Sarah called Mommy. Emma's excitement seemed dangerously oblivious to the minefield she was dancing through. She explained that you're not dating and she only talked to you about work stuff, and Mommy seemed less mad after. Jake's heart stopped. Sarah had called Rebecca? Without consulting him first? The intervention was either brilliant or catastrophic, and he wouldn't know which until he talked to his ex-wife. What exactly did Miss Sarah say? He kept his voice carefully neutral, not wanting to alarm Emma with his own anxiety. Just that you helped with her investigation, and she met me by accident when she came to ask you questions. Emma dumped her backpack on the couch, pulling out a drawing she'd made, a stick-figure family with labels that made Jake's chest tighten. Mommy said she wants to talk to you about custody stuff, but she sounded less mad than before. The drawing showed Jake, Emma, and a third figure labeled Miss Sarah with a police badge. They were holding hands, all three of them, with a big sun and a house in the background. The innocence of it contrasted sharply with the legal complications swirling around them. Sweetie, I need you to understand something important. Jake sat beside her, picking his words with extreme care. Miss Sarah is a friend, but she's not part of our family. You, me, and Mommy, we're your family. Other people can be important to us without being family. Emma's face fell. But I like her. She's nice, and she knows about science, and she doesn't treat me like a baby. I like her too, but liking someone doesn't automatically make them family. He pulled Emma close, feeling the fragility of childhood in her small frame. Right now, Mommy and I are figuring out grown-up things about schedules and where you'll spend time. Those decisions might change, and I don't want you to worry about any of it. Is Mommy going to make me live with her all the time? The question emerged, small and scared, Emma's biggest fear finally voiced. I don't want to leave you, Daddy. Jake's heart shattered. He'd been so focused on Rebecca's legal maneuvering and Sarah's reappearance that he'd failed to consider how the uncertainty was affecting Emma. Nobody's going to make you do anything you don't want to do. The judge will talk to you about what you prefer, and your opinion matters. Promise? She looked up at him with eyes that held too much worry for 8 years old. Promise. He sealed it with a hug, holding her until she squirmed away, attention already shifting to her homework. Once Emma was occupied with math problems, Jake called Rebecca. She answered on the third ring, her tone significantly calmer than their last conversation. Detective Anderson called me. Rebecca didn't bother with pleasantries. She was very professional, very clear that your contact has been related to her investigation, and nothing more. She shouldn't have done that without asking me first. Jake kept his voice low, mindful of Emma in the next room. But I appreciate her trying to smooth things over. She also made it clear that if we proceed with a custody modification based on allegations of an unstable romantic relationship, she'd be willing to testify that no such relationship exists. Rebecca paused, and Jake could hear her rethinking her strategy. My lawyer says that kind of testimony from a credible law enforcement officer would significantly weaken my case. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by guilt at the deception. Sarah had lied for him, put her professional reputation on the line to protect his custody arrangement. The gesture was both touching and deeply problematic. So you're dropping the modification request? He hardly dared hope. I'm putting it on hold, pending further developments. Rebecca's caveat hung like a sword over his head. But Jake, if I find out you've been lying to me, if you are involved with her and you're just hiding it, I will bury you in court. Understood? Understood. The word tasted like ash. He was lying, or at least living in a gray area that would collapse under legal scrutiny. The kiss, the charged moments, the undeniable pull between them, all of it amounted to a relationship, whether they'd formalized it or not. After ending the call, Jake found Sarah's number and dialed before he could second-guess the impulse. She answered immediately, background noise suggesting she was still working despite it being Saturday evening. You called Rebecca. Not a question, an accusation wrapped in disbelief. I did. No apology in her tone, just calm acknowledgement. She was threatening your custody based on assumptions about us. I corrected those assumptions. By lying.
Jake paced his kitchen, anger and gratitude warring for dominance. You told her we're not involved, which is technically true only because we haven't defined what we're doing, but that kiss this morning says otherwise. The kiss was a moment. It doesn't constitute a relationship unless we decide it does. Sarah's logic was sound, detective training evident in her ability to parse definitions. I protected your custody arrangement by being precise with my language. There's no official relationship. What exists between us is complicated and undefined, which means Rebecca's allegations are unfounded. That's semantics. But even as he argued, Jake recognized the genius of her approach. She'd given him cover while technically not lying, a lawyer's trick deployed with a cop's precision. It's the truth as it exists right now, in this moment. Her voice softened. Jake, I meant what I said about putting Emma first.
If protecting your relationship with your daughter means we have to keep whatever this is between us quiet and unofficial, I can live with that. The offer should have relieved him. Instead, it highlighted the impossible position they were in, unable to move forward publicly, unwilling to let go completely, trapped in ambiguity that served no one. What do you want from this? The question emerged raw and unfiltered. From me, from us, from whatever we're calling this. Silence stretched across the phone line. When Sarah finally spoke, her words carried the weight of a decade's accumulated longing. I want a second chance. I want to prove I'm not the person who ran away. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up knowing you're still there. But more than any of that, I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. Jake leaned against his counter, eyes closed, letting her words wash over him. You make it sound simple. It is simple. We just keep making it complicated because we're scared. A pause, then vulnerability crept into her voice. I'm terrified, Jake. Terrified that I'll mess this up again, that I'll hurt you, that I'm being selfish by wanting something I don't deserve. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending another decade wondering, what if? Emma called from the living room, asking for help with a math problem. Reality intruded with its mundane demands, reminding Jake that his life wasn't just about his own desires. I have to go. Emma needs me. He heard the deflection in his own voice, using his daughter as a shield against emotions too big to process. I know. Go be her dad. That's what matters. Sarah's understanding only made it harder. But Jake, think about what I said. Sometimes the scariest thing is exactly what we need to do. Monday morning brought Danny Torres to the construction site an hour early, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles ringed his eyes, his clothes hung loose like he'd lost weight, and his hands trembled as he approached Jake near the equipment trailer. I need to tell you something. Danny's voice cracked with stress. Before Detective Anderson figures it out and I end up in jail. Jake set down his coffee, giving the kid his full attention. What did you do, Danny? I didn't steal the stuff. I swear on my mother's grave, I didn't steal it. Tears pooled in Danny's eyes, threatening to spill over. But I know who did. And I helped them plan it because they promised to clear my debts if I gave them the security code and camera locations. The confession hit like a physical blow. Jake had been hoping for Danny's innocence, clinging to the belief that his judgment hadn't failed so completely. Who? My bookie. Guy named Ricky Salazar runs a gambling operation out of a bar in the East End. Danny's words tumbled out in a rush. Desperate confession from someone drowning in consequences. He said if I helped him hit the site, we'd call it even on what I owed. I didn't think about what it would mean for you, for the crew, for everyone who depended on those tools. I just wanted the debt gone. Jake's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. You gave criminals access to a site I'm responsible for? Do you understand how much damage this could do to Morrison Construction? To Jim, who gave us both the chance when nobody else would? I know. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Danny swiped at his eyes, trying to maintain some shred of dignity. I'm going to turn myself in, tell Detective Anderson everything. But I wanted you to hear it from me first, because you've always been straight with me, and I owe you that much. You're damn right you do. Jake wanted to yell, to rage at the stupidity and selfishness that had led Danny to this point. But the kid was 24 and terrified and already destroyed by his own choices. Anger wouldn't fix anything. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Detective Anderson right now, tell her everything you just told me. Then you're going to cooperate fully with her investigation, help her build a case against Salazar, and hope to God the DA offers you a deal for your cooperation. And my job? Danny asked, already knowing the answer. Gone. Today. You betrayed everyone here. Jake felt each word like pulling teeth, hating the necessity of it. I'll write you a reference for your work quality. Nothing about this incident. But I can't keep you on the crew. The guys would never accept it. Danny nodded, defeated. Can I use your phone? Mine's about to get shut off because I couldn't pay the bill. Jake handed over his cell, watching as Danny made the call that would likely send him to jail as an accessory to theft. Sarah answered professionally, her tone shifting when Danny identified himself and started confessing. She instructed him to stay put. She'd be there within 20 minutes to take his formal statement. The wait was excruciating. Danny sat on the ground near the trailer, head in his hands, occasionally shaking with silent sobs. Jake busied himself with work he didn't need to do, checking inventory that had already been counted, organizing tools that were already organized. When Sarah's sedan pulled up, relief and dread twisted together in his gut. She emerged in full detective mode, badge, gun, notepad, recording device. This wasn't the woman who'd kissed him or called his ex-wife on his behalf. This was Detective Anderson, here to do a job regardless of personal complications. Mr. Torres, Mr. Mitchell. She acknowledged them both with professional courtesy. Mr. Torres, you indicated you have information regarding the theft on this property. I'm prepared to take your statement. Please be aware that anything you say can be used against you in court. Danny nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. I understand. I want to tell you everything. Sarah led him to her car, conducting the interview in her front seat with the recorder running and Jake standing close enough to hear through the open door. Danny's confession was thorough. Dates, times, how he'd provided security information to Salazar, where the stolen materials had been taken, even details about the gambling operation that had gotten him into this mess. Throughout it all, Sarah maintained perfect professionalism. She asked clarifying questions, made notes, showed no reaction to the information beyond what was necessary for the investigation. Only once did her mask slip, a brief glance at Jake when Danny mentioned the debts totaled nearly $20,000, nearly double what Jake had been told. The interview lasted 90 minutes. By the time Sarah finished, the rest of the crew had arrived and were watching from a careful distance, understanding without being told that something significant was happening. Sarah stepped out of her vehicle, addressing Jake in a voice meant to carry. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Torres has provided valuable information that should help us recover the stolen property and make arrests. I'll be in touch with updates. She drove away with Danny still in her passenger seat,
heading to the station for formal processing. Jake turned to face his crew, all of them staring with various expressions of confusion, anger, and betrayal. Joe spoke first, his disappointment evident. Danny was involved? He gave information to the thieves in exchange for debt forgiveness. Jake kept his explanation brief, factual. He's cooperating with the investigation. I've terminated his employment, effective immediately. Marcus spat into the dirt, knew that kid was trouble from day one. Enough! Jake's voice cracked like a whip, silencing further commentary. Danny made terrible choices, and he's paying for them. We move forward from here. I'll need someone to take over his sections. Joe, can you reassign his work? The crew dispersed to their tasks, the incident providing fodder for gossip that would last weeks. Jake retreated to the trailer, needing a moment alone to process the morning's revelations. His phone rang. Sarah, calling from her office number rather than her cell. Salazar has a record, multiple theft charges, assault, running an illegal gambling operation. She dispensed information in clipped professional tones, but underneath, Jake heard exhaustion. Danny's cooperation is going to be crucial for building a case. The DA's office is already talking about a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for testimony. Will he do jail time? Jake found himself hoping the answer was no, despite everything. Probably probation and community service, given his cooperation and clean record prior to this. Papers rustled in the background. Jake, I'm sorry. I know you vouched for him, saw potential. This has to hurt. I keep thinking I should have seen the signs. The nervousness, the money problems, all of it was right there, and I just didn't want to believe someone I trusted could betray us. He sank into the trailer's worn office chair, suddenly exhausted. Makes me question my judgment about a lot of things. Your judgment is fine. You saw someone struggling and tried to help. That's not weakness, it's compassion. Her voice softened, detective mode giving way to something more personal. The world needs more people who believe in second chances, even when they get burned sometimes. Is that what we're doing? Second chances? The question carried double meaning, referring to both Danny and themselves. Sarah hesitated, clearly aware they were crossing from professional to personal territory on a work call. I'd like to think so, but that's a conversation for another time, another place. Agreed. Jake glanced out the trailer window at his crew, all of them pointedly not looking his direction while obviously talking about him. I need to get back to work. Keep me posted on the investigation? Always. A pause, then she added quietly, Take care of yourself, Jake. The line went dead. Jake sat in the silence of the trailer, surrounded by blueprints and invoices and all the mundane paperwork of running a construction site, feeling like his personal life was spiraling beyond his control. That evening, Emma's school called. She'd gotten into a fight during recess, pushed another student who'd been teasing her about having divorced parents. The principal's voice on the phone carried disappointment and concern in equal measure. Jake arrived to find Emma sitting in the office, tear-stained and defiant. The other child, a boy named Trevor with a bloody nose, glared from across the room while his mother berated the principal about violence and proper supervision. Emma never acts out like this. Principal Morrison, no relation to Jim despite the shared surname, gestured to his office. Can we speak privately, Mr. Mitchell? Inside the office, Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, waited with a folder of concerning observations. Emma had been distracted in class, not completing homework, seeming anxious and withdrawn. The fight was just the most visible symptom of a larger problem. Is everything all right at home? Mrs. Patterson's concern was genuine, motherly. Emma mentioned that her mother was upset about something, that there might be changes to her living situation. Jake's heart sank. He'd tried to shield Emma from the custody drama, but 8-year-olds absorbed more than adults realized.
We're going through some adjustments. I'll make sure Emma gets the support she needs.
The meeting ended with a suspension, 3 days at home, a harsh punishment that would mean Jake scrambling to arrange childcare during work hours. Martha agreed immediately when he called, telling him to stop apologizing and get Emma home safe. He drove Emma home in silence, neither of them ready to discuss what had happened. Finally, in the safety of their kitchen, Emma broke down completely. Trevor said kids with divorced parents are broken, that we don't have real families. And I got so mad because we do have a real family. It's just different. And I pushed him. Jake pulled her close, letting her cry against his shirt while his own heart broke for her pain. Baby girl, Trevor's wrong. Family isn't about who lives in the same house or whether parents are married. Family is about love and showing up and being there for each other.
But what if Mommy makes me live with her all the time? What if I don't get to see you?
Emma's worst fears spilled out in hiccuping sobs.
What if everything changes and I don't have a say?
Listen to me. Jake tilted her chin up, forcing eye contact. No matter what happens with the custody arrangement, you will always be my daughter. Always. Nothing can change that, not lawyers or judges or anyone else. You're stuck with me forever.
Promise?
Her voice was so small, so vulnerable. On everything I hold sacred, I promise. He meant it with every fiber of his being. Now how about we make some dinner, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do about school, okay? Emma nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. Can we have spaghetti? I know it's not Thursday, but I want comfort food. They cooked together, Emma measuring ingredients while Jake handled the stove.
The normalcy of the routine provided comfort, a reminder that some things remained constant even when everything else felt uncertain. After Emma was in bed, Jake sat on his porch with a beer he didn't really want, staring at the stars and trying to process the wreckage of his day. Danny's betrayal, Emma's fight, the constant pressure of Rebecca's legal threats, Sarah's complicated presence in his life, all of it pressed down with crushing weight. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Heard about Emma's suspension. Is she okay? Jake stared at the message, wondering how she'd found out so quickly. Small town, he supposed. News traveled through unofficial channels faster than formal ones. She's dealing with a lot. Pushed a kid who said mean things about divorce. The response came almost immediately. Kids can be cruel. She's lucky to have you. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, thanks. Long day. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations. Just offering. The kindness in the gesture nearly undid him. Jake wanted to accept, wanted to pour out everything to someone who would understand, who knew him well enough to see through his defenses. But doing so would mean crossing another line, deepening their connection when he was supposed to be maintaining distance. Appreciate it. Need to process solo for now. Understood. Take care, Jake. He set the phone aside, finished his beer, and went to check on Emma one last time before bed. She slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, face peaceful in a way it hadn't been while awake. He stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, and made a silent vow. Whatever happened with Sarah, whatever Rebecca's lawyers threw at him, whatever challenges emerged from the chaos of his life, Emma would be protected. Her happiness, her stability, her sense of security would come first. Always. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Vosé arrived at Jake's house an hour before he was supposed to take Emma to Martha's for childcare coverage, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk." She glanced at Emma, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table. "Privately." They stepped onto the porch, Jake's defenses immediately up. Rebecca looked tired, older than her 37 years, stress evident in the lines around her eyes. "I got a call from Principal Morrison about Emma's fight." Rebecca crossed her arms, not quite meeting Jake's gaze. "He said she's been showing signs of stress and anxiety, that the custody uncertainty is affecting her." "I'm handling it." Jake kept his tone neutral, refusing to be put on the defensive. "Are you?" The question wasn't accusatory, just genuinely curious. "Because from where I'm standing, our daughter is falling apart while we fight over schedules and living arrangements." Jake's jaw tightened. "You're the one who threatened to modify custody." "I've been trying to maintain stability. And I've been trying to protect her from watching you make the same mistakes with Sarah that you made with me." Rebecca finally looked at him directly. "But maybe I've been going about it wrong. Maybe what Emma needs isn't for us to control every variable, but to show her that we can coexist peacefully." The shift in Rebecca's position caught Jake off guard. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we table the custody modification. Keep things as they are, 50-50 split." She took a breath, clearly struggling with what came next. "And I'm suggesting that if you are involved with Sarah, or if you want to be, that you're honest about it instead of sneaking around. Because kids always know when adults are lying, and the secrets are worse than the truth." "I'm not involved with Sarah." The denial came automatically, habit more than conviction. Rebecca's smile was sad, knowing. "You're a terrible liar, Jake. You always have been." "I could see it in your eyes every time you told me you loved me. The part of you that was holding back, wishing I was someone else." The accusation, delivered without malice, still stung. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know. And that's almost worse because it means you hurt both of us by trying to be someone you're not." She moved toward her car, done with the conversation. "I'm dropping the modification. Emma stays with you on your weeks, with me on mine, and we both commit to being civil and cooperative. Deal?" "Deal." Relief and confusion warred in Jake's chest. "Rebecca, why the change?" "Because I talked to my therapist, who pointed out that trying to control your romantic life was really about my own insecurity and fear of being replaced in Emma's affections." Rebecca opened her car door, paused. "And because Emma drew a picture at my house, of her family. It included you, me, her, and a woman with a police badge. She's already accepted Sarah as part of her world. Fighting that would only hurt her." She drove away before Jake could respond, leaving him standing on his porch trying to process the conversation. Inside, Emma had finished her cereal and was watching cartoons, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred in the adults' relationship. Jake pulled out his phone, stared at Sarah's contact information, and made a decision. He couldn't keep living in this limbo, pretending his feelings didn't exist while they colored every interaction. Something had to change. He called. She answered on the second ring. "Can you come over tonight? After Emma's asleep?" His heart pounded. Commitment terrifying and necessary. "We need to talk. Really talk. About what we're doing and what we want and whether any of this is even possible." Silence. Then Sarah's voice, careful and hopeful. "I'll be there at 9. At 8:30, Martha arrived to watch Emma while she slept, giving Jake a knowing look. "Don't screw this up, Jacob. Second chances don't come along every day. No pressure or anything." But he smiled, grateful for his mother's blunt wisdom. Sarah arrived exactly at 9, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous, vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. The confident detective replaced by the woman he'd fallen in love with a decade ago. They sat on his porch, the night cool and clear, stars visible despite the ambient light from town. For a long moment, neither spoke, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space between them. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "Rebecca dropped the custody modification. She essentially gave us her blessing to figure out what we're doing, as long as we're honest with Emma." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's unexpected." "Yeah." He turned to face her fully, needing her to see his sincerity. "Which means the excuses are gone. The reasons we've been using to keep distance, to avoid defining this, they don't apply anymore." "So what are we doing, Jake?" Her voice held a tremor, fear and hope mixed in equal measure. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. The contact felt electric, charged with possibility and risk. "I don't know, but I'm tired of pretending I don't want to find out." Sarah moved closer, close enough that he could feel her warmth, smell her perfume, see the pulse jumping in her throat. "I'm scared. Of hurting you again, of not being enough, of all the ways this could go wrong." "Me too." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "But I'm more scared of spending another decade wondering what if. Of being safe and alone instead of risking everything for something real." She kissed him then, slow and deep, a kiss that felt like a promise and a prayer wrapped together. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both trembling, she whispered against his lips, "Then let's be scared together. Let's take the risk and see where it leads." Jake pulled her close, holding tight like she might disappear if he let go. "No more running?" "No more running." Sarah's arms wrapped around him, anchoring them both. "I'm here. For real this time. For as long as you'll have me." They sat intertwined under the stars, two people who'd found each other twice, hoping desperately that this time would be different, that growth and time and hard-won wisdom would be enough to build something lasting from the wreckage of their past. They sat intertwined under the stars, two people who'd found each other twice, refusing to waste another moment on fear. Sarah's hand found his, fingers lacing together with the certainty of a promise finally kept. "No more running," she whispered. "No more running," Jake echoed and believed it.